Welcome to our roundtable on careers in business, featuring University of Tennessee alumni Amanda Henneghan, Cara Orellana, and Mal Alder. We are excited to welcome you all here today, but let me first take a moment to talk to you or to introduce our roundtable participants. Amanda Henneghan is a native Memphian. Sorry, I don't know if I've ever actually put that word together before. A next generation communications professional and a passionate community advocate recognized among the top rising leaders in Memphis. With over 15 years of communications experience across diverse industries and excelling leadership capacities, Amanda has significantly contributed to both nonprofit organizations and Fortune 500 companies. Currently, she is a senior communications manager at Amazon, where she leads innovative internal communications strategies, executive messaging, and issues management for Amazon's North America delivery businesses, supporting over 850,000 employees across North America. Cara Oriana is currently the Chief of Staff to the Chief Marketing Officer at Verizon and also oversees strategic planning and business operations for the marketing organization. Prior to Verizon, she spent almost a decade at Visa, driving successful transformational initiatives across the enterprise and held leadership roles across multiple teams, including marketing, human resources, technology, and government relations. Cara earned her bachelor's in English from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and master's of business administration from the University of Denver. Mal Alder is a dynamic marketing professional and dedicated community advocate with a proven track record of driving growth and innovation for small businesses and nonprofit organizations. As a founder of Alderwood Creative, a full-service marketing agency established in 2018, Mal has successfully supported over 100 clients in achieving their goals. Her agency has been recognized with numerous accolades, including the Addy Awards from the Knoxville chapter of the American Advertising Federation, City View Magazine's Best of the Best Award, and multiple Knoxville's Finest honors. Beyond her work in marketing, Mal is an active community leader serving on various nonprofit boards and committees, including Leadership Knoxville's Introduction Knoxville Committee, Zoo Knoxville Circle of Friends Leadership Committee, and the ARC of Knoxville's Knox County Board of Directors. So welcome to all three of you. We're so excited to have you here and so excited to hear about your journey from English major to business superstar. So I'm going to do these questions. We're going to kind of do it popcorn style. So I'm going to ask a question and y'all can just jump in as you desire. So I kind of want to start out talking about a little bit about your time as an English major at UT and how your coursework here prepared you for a career in business.
Well, I'm happy to jump in. I started as an English rhetoric and writing major, and candidly, I don't necessarily know that my path was originally leading towards communications. I actually was on a track to go into education, elementary education specifically, and was pretty far down that path and was in the fellowship years and realized this isn't really the direction I want to go. And my mother actually happened to remind me way back in high school when I was 16, recorded a video saying I want to go into communications. And so I always loved writing. I loved telling stories, loved reading stories. And so kind of pivoted my career when I accepted an internship with the state of Tennessee. And it was really just kind of, let's try this out and see. And then did a work study program and with an advertising agency, and that kind of redirected my path down this communications journey that I'm on. And so I think that is the start of it. But as I kind of transitioned more into like those writing based courses and really got to kind of put my mind to paper through my pen as I was typing papers, as I was reading all of the books, textbooks that we had to kind of go through and kind of jumped into it more. All of that really just kind of added fuel to that fire. And here I am today.
I can go next. So at my time at the University of Tennessee, I focused on creative writing with a concentration in poetry. And so one might think that's kind of an unusual path for someone to start at and then end up where I am today. But I actually took a technical writing course while I was as one of my electives while I was in school, and that I didn't know that that career actually existed, and so it was something that once I graduated and I was applying for grad schools to get my MFA, I had this like, oh shit moment, or I was scared that I wouldn't get into any schools. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply. I'm gonna apply on the side to some different jobs and try to get a job as kind of like a safety net. And then I ended up getting my first role and start in business was in technical writing. And I did that for the first I would say 3-ish years of my career. And then I had a mentor at Visa who was like, you should really kind of look into what you can do beyond just this technical writing scope. And that's when I decided to go back to business school. But I do believe, and then have since transitioned more into kind of a strategy and operations type role, and I'm working as chief of staff. But I think my time at University of Tennessee and the courses in English really gave me an advantage over other people working in the business in general, because there is such like an emphasis in your career on storytelling, particularly when you're presenting to executives. So it's really, really good skill to have to be able to take people along for the journey and touch the right audiences with the right information at the right time.
Sure. It's kind of funny. I'm going last because I feel like I'm a little bit of a blend of the first two, because I was also creative writing with an emphasis in poetry, but I had zero interest in going to grad school. And for the longest time, my dad was trying to push me to also go the education path, but I also don't like children. So, two kind of important things. So I was, as I said, poetry, and then I minored in journalism. So it was kind of, I graduated with a hand cramp and a prayer. But what I really appreciated through the creative writing in the English department was the stories that I learned kind of taught me to look at the world differently and through a different perspective, and even probably approach it with kind of not necessarily a non-biased approach, but to understand probably my implicit bias in the situation, because you're reading all of these stories of people from their different perspectives, their different lived experiences. And then through poetry, you really lean in on the importance and power individual words carry. So now being in a marketing role where everything's punchy, everything's short, there's social media, you have character limits, persuasive writing, all these are really important. And a lot of it boils down to you have limited word choice. So how can you move the needle and be prolific in your writing while still driving a message? I definitely appreciate all of the lessons that I've learned through there.
I love all of that. That is so wonderful. We've touched on this a little bit in your first answer, but maybe we want to zoom in a little bit more. So each of you is working in slightly different fields and in very different types of business. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do, what your day-to-day looks like?
I can go first. I'm smiling because the answer is it's different every day. So currently working at Verizon and telecom, which is kind of a behemoth of an industry, and with very limited, I would say, major competitors. So the type of business is kind of focused in looking at two of our major competitors. But I would say I'm currently working as a chief of staff. So my day-to-day kind of varies every day. And so part of my role is really supporting the chief marketing officer. So what that looks like is being a strategic partner or a thought partner to her, working through anything from industry issues to HR issues to anything of the like. Other things that I do is help prioritize her time. So making sure she focuses on the right priorities at the right moment in time. And then another part of my job is more overseeing our operations, strategic business operations. So helping the organization and the leadership team map out their planning for the year. So a lot of a focus on budget management, goals and KPIs, that sort of thing. And then anything else that comes my way. So it definitely varies.
Sure. So as the bio said, I run a full service digital marketing agency. We are still based in Knoxville, Tennessee. I have a team of three full time. We also have an intern who's also from the University of Tennessee right now. Snaps to her. But I think, you know, what Kara said, really no 2 days are ever the same, especially with agency life. Everything's the number one priority. The house is always on fire, and you can never find where the baby's crying, but you're going to keep trying. Um, so just kind of being able to be malleable and jump in as needed. It's definitely fun finding a balance. It's interesting shifting from being the person doing all of the work to then being the person that helps guide the team to the work. It's definitely been a interesting growth opportunity for me over the last almost 7 years now.
Awesome. And I think I'm back. So I'm just going to kind of take liberties. What I think I heard the question as being, what does a day-to-day look like is my assumption. But I work in the world of operations. And if you're anywhere in the world, I can guarantee you, Amazon has probably touched something that has arrived at your door or that you've used at some place. And I think, like Mal said, the world is always on fire. And so I think a day to day for me is truly taking the time to dig into the problems that are going on and taking the time to find the solutions, right? And poke holes throughout, whatever it is you may be to try to come to the best kind of solution, if you will. So similarly, I think as both Kara and Mal have said, no day is the same. Everything is always on fire, and my goal is usually just how can I get to a best case solution that it's a message that resonates at the end of the day with the audience that we're talking to.
That's wonderful. So, so many, you all have such impressive titles, like working in amazing fields and really, just owning your own business, working in, like really high positions within in communications and marketing, etc. Can you tell me a little bit about the first job? I know, Kara, you mentioned it a little bit, but like, how did you get from like undergraduate and then where did it start? What came right after? Because I feel like so many of our students are like, I don't know what even to look for in that first job.
Sure. I was browsing Craigslist during my 17th century poetry class, my last semester of college. So to date myself there. But so circling back, minor in journalism. So my last semester of college, I was interning at the Knoxville News Sentinel, which is the major local paper. And that's where I got to live out my childhood dream of being, Harriet the Spy, investigative journalist. But during that time, so 2013, it's really when you started to see a big shift in the journalism industry. It's when a lot of the newspapers' websites were going behind paywalls. I'm not saying the News Sentinel did this, but there was a lot of more advertorial writing in journalism than necessarily true, like nose to the ground journalism. And I, it was kind of, if we're gonna do marketing, let's just get the pay that comes with doing marketing. So I stumbled upon a listing on Craigslist for a digital marketing agency that was hiring for content writers. They were developing a content department. And at the time, I'd never written a blog. I hadn't really ever written anything marketing specific. I didn't know what SEO was, but I knew I was smart. I knew I could write, and I'm pretty good at figuring things out. So I ended up getting that job and was there for 3 years. And that was my first experience into social media, email marketing, paid ads, websites, kind of all of those things. And I just fell in love with it and got obsessed. And I was really fortunate that I've just stayed in the industry ever since and let it kind of grew with it.
Okay, I can Oh, I just saw Amanda. Do you want to go? You want to take it first?
I happy to jump in. I think I kind of mentioned my first job was an internship. And it was right after college. It was an unpaid internship with the state government. And it was really just trying to get my feet wet and get your foot in the door, right? Which is always the first and most important step. And so I knew that it was a risk packing up my things from Knoxville and moving to Nashville for what could be a very short or long time. But I was kind of committed at that point in time to really just kind of show what I could do. And it just so happened to be at the beginnings of what some may recall as the H1N1 pandemic or swine flu at that time. And I was working with the Department of Health. And so we were super busy. And I just kind of put my head down and really learned through that process and learned by doing and put my best foot forward. And in the course of that, on the back end, while not a guarantee, I was offered a job to come on full time. But a lot of that really was just me sometimes going the extra mile beyond kind of what I knew, or as some people like say, faking it till I made it, and really just kind of applying the skills that I had gained from the University of Tennessee and all of those English courses, and trying to put them to work during a very busy time. And so from there, I think that's just kind of really been my mantra through all of the positions and all of the companies that I've worked for, is really just putting best foot forward, applying, raising my hand for the risky things, whether it is that unpaid internship, that parallel move, that area that I may not know anything about, but I know that communication skills are translatable regardless of what the topic may be. And through that, I've had a lot of great opportunities and experiences and growth for myself as a communications professional to where I am today.
And I mentioned this in one of my earlier answers, but started my career as a technical writer, was my first job out of college. Erin actually, I believe, edited my resume. So thank you for that. It worked. I got the job. And that I was working for a small to mid-size consulting firm at the time. They did software implementations in government agencies like the Department of Revenue, Department of Transportation, stuff like that. And they had this philosophy that to be a technical writer, you really had to get you had to be intimately familiar with your end user. And so that was the client. And so what they had me do for my first part of the job was I had to go out on the client's site, and which was in Alaska. So they actually moved me to Alaska, and I lived there for about I think it was like almost 2 years. And I was on a project site working with the client, learning the software product, learning the client's needs, really understanding being an end user. And then after I kind of finished that short-term assignment, they moved me to headquarters in Denver, Colorado. And that's when I started kind of doing my technical writing work, and was able to really take what I learned on site to apply it to my role at the global headquarters.
I love hearing these stories. So because it's getting that origin story of where we start versus where we end up, I think is always an interesting path. So I guess asking a kind of foundational Englishy sort of question. How do you feel like classes in literature, creative writing, tech writing prepared you for work in the business world?
Yeah. For me, I think it comes down to two things. The first thing is storytelling. Like, being able to bring people along for the journey is such an asset in business, because a lot of things, depending on the company culture, it's either done through a PowerPoint, might be done through a document, it could be done verbally. And to be able to have those skills to clearly structure a story for someone and then be able to take them along and influence through your point of view is like indispensable. The second piece that I was actually reflecting on this past weekend is the ability from an English major perspective. You do a lot of reading, like you do a ton of reading and then you're thinking about an idea, you really learn how to hone your critical thinking skills and be able to read something and then have a point of view and like articulate that in a really logical and thoughtful way. And that is another huge asset to business, I think, because a lot of things, you're not given an answer to every single thing. There's new business problems that pop up every day. Sometimes your leader doesn't even know how to handle a business problem. So it's critical to be able to absorb a ton of different data or information and then be able to digest that and then articulate it back to someone in a very simple and concise and logical way. So those are the top two.
I'll definitely just say ditto. But you kind of mentioned storytelling and it's really important. So in my world, we drive strategy. It's always because we apply what marketing tactics we implement for our clients, we always tie to an objective. And so whether you're writing a story, you're writing a poem, or you're drawing out a marketing strategy, you are starting at one point and you have a goal that you want the user to get to. So it's really thinking about who is along this journey with you, what is their experience, how are you guiding them there, and making sure that you are driving them in the right way so they reach kind of the final result you want them to, but they don't necessarily know all of the intricacies that they've gone through to get there. So I think you hit the nail on the head too with the critical thinking skills and being able to think fast on your feet. And then let's not forget, it's not that you're reading one novel a week, you're reading 5. So keeping them all straight in your head and who wrote what, when, and why. So, oh, and learning the proper use of juxtaposition.
And I guess I'll say ditto, ditto. I think for me, especially in the world that I work in, perspective has been one of the biggest kind of gains, and not so much taking in all of the ways that you can put it on paper is one thing for sure, right? Words are powerful, and bringing people along in that process, but it's also about how they're receiving the words. Particularly in my world where I'm talking to people, we know they don't read as much anymore. We know that they have been trained to receive information in very small, bite-sized, limited chunks, as Mal mentioned earlier. But all of those words, however few or many that they are, have meaning, and they are received differently. And so as I'm thinking about how I'm articulating a message, how I'm crafting an email, how I'm putting together some message, it's just as much about as how would I receive this if I were in this position, or how would I receive this if I were going through this particular scenario or situation, depending on what the climate may be. And then I also think that it has equipped me to be more articulate in kind of this kind of pushback, right? I think particularly in the more corporate spaces, you do have to be very articulate in how you share your perspective, and be able to articulate your side of an argument to be able to influence the ways that people will make decisions. And you have, in some cases, those senior leaders that sit up in offices that are making very big life-changing decisions for hundreds of thousands of employees at a time, and sometimes you have to be that voice of reason and be able to articulate when you agree and articulate also when you disagree. And so in those moments, I think all of those learnings have allowed me to see things from multiple perspectives, and then also take those perspectives to articulate and push back where I need to.
That's wonderful. And again, yeah, I think it's so interesting because I mean, so many folks, the like what do you do with an English major? I'm like, there's so many things that you can do with an English major, and I appreciate that y'all are telling us a little bit more about all the different ways that these skill sets like actually translate into the real world. Plus, also getting to have major in a thing that is fun. So bonus on that side. So with that thinking about that, thinking back to those days and also thinking about to our current students, What do you wish you had known as an undergrad or maybe a recent graduate choosing to take their English skills to the business sector? And what can students do now to help them prepare to maybe start thinking about a career in business?
I think the big thing I would say is don't be afraid to have fun with what are they called? Like your extracurricular classes, like the kind of like filler ones that aren't necessarily for your degree. Because even if not necessarily you don't have to take business 101 to go into business one day. But what you do have to do is hold a small talk conversation with a stranger. And so those kind of extracurricular classes give you those interesting tidbits that you can share. I say it's my director of operations desk right now. I still have the textbook for my history of dinosaur class. And I bring that up at any way, shape, or form I can. But I'm also obsessed with dinosaurs. But so I think if I would go back, I would kind of tell the younger self of me, or looking at, the other student right now who's just looking to graduate, just looks a good out. Like, enjoy it, have fun with it, like, enjoy the ride a little bit. I think the way the job market is kind of shifting right now and how we're all here right now, you don't have to necessarily major in what you grow up to do. I own a marketing agency and I've never taken a marketing class. So how can you just make yourself an interesting person and take this opportunity of the wealth of knowledge available to you to help set yourself up for success later?
Okay, I'll go. So one thing I think I wish I would have known earlier, um, is just the this one single idea is that you can always choose again. You don't have to choose one path, and it's kind of like what Mal was saying. Like, she didn't study in marketing, but now she owns her own marketing agency. Like, you can always choose again. So it's like, don't ever limit yourself to thinking that, oh, the decision that I made to be an English major, or the decision I made to have like a certain first time job means that that's going to pigeonhole you into the rest of your career. You can always make a career pivot. You can always do something differently, and you can always choose again. That's always in your power. And things I think would be worth considering for younger students right now, in addition to what Mal mentioned about enjoying the time and like having fun extracurriculars, is like really identifying what areas energize you. Because those areas you're going to want to pull into your career. So like if you hate, reading, like, don't follow a career or start in a company where you're going to have to do like a lot of heads down reading and, regurgitate something. That probably wasn't the best example, but the point is, find areas of passion that energize you, and try to be self-aware enough to identify what those are so that you can pursue careers or companies that would help flourish that for yourself.
I think my thought is kind of along the lines of what Kara shared, but perhaps from the different end of the spectrum. I think my time at UT was just as much about finding what I didn't like as it was finding out, what I truly did. And so I think sometimes, I think as Mal mentioned, how do I get to graduation, right? All of these assignments that are on the syllabus are a task, right? But I think if you allow yourself to truly step back and take them for what they can be, right? It will enable you to similarly find your passions, or contrarily find what you do not like. And so I think for me, it's taking the risk and, really stepping outside of what is your comfort zone, to identify those different opportunities along your way, such that you are able to really hone in on what makes you tick and what makes you excited, and And sometimes that risk is deciding what major you're going to choose. It's deciding if you're going to go to grad school or not. It's also deciding if you're going to accept that job that's been offered, that may be the parallel move, or that promotion, or in some cases it may be that step back for you to kind of regain your perspective and rechart your path in whatever direction it is that you want to go. But I think it is learning from all of those opportunities and choosing to take those risks along the way, because I think that all of it contributes to just making you a more holistic, well-rounded person, as well as a professional, regardless of which direction you may go in.
That's great. And I want to end a little bit kind of in an advice sort of iteration. So, a lot of students are like, well, why, if I'm going to go into communications, why don't I major in communications? If I'm going to go into marketing, why not why not major in marketing? So what advice do you have to English majors who may not feel that their area of study doesn't necessarily line up with the more business focused careers?
So I'll say I was a business major until I got 2 C's in calculus and realized I hate math. So I remember going to my advisor. I was like, I don't think this is for me. And she was pretty much like, oh, sweet summer child, I've been waiting for you to come to this conclusion. Yes, maybe you should major in English. Um, and I think majoring in communications, I think all of these are great. And it kind of goes back to what I'm saying, like play around with your extracurricular classes to learn new skills. But one of the things with those specific majors is don't pigeonhole yourself. So I see it from a hiring perspective, just to kind of pick on, no college in particular, but how things are laid out is I will interview graphic designers who have a graphic design degree, but they don't know how to read a brand guideline. Or, I will interview someone with a communications degree that does not know how to write an email. So it's like, what really did you learn? Like, I think it's fantastic, art history. I think it's like, I know most of the reasons why their journalism laws exist is because the New York Times got sued, except for payola, which came from a radio DJ. But, I know that through my minor, but it really was English and those different stories that you read or those classes that you take. And the things you learn that you probably wouldn't learn. I remember, I think my English 102 class was taught by a TA, and it kind of taught basically was kind of like a protest class without like protesting, where we learned about like the shanties that were set up in front of humanities during the 70s when they were protesting. I want to say potentially the Vietnam War. Fact check me on that one. But like I wouldn't have necessarily learned that in a history class. It was through pursuing the English degree, because I think the stories are written in a way to be remembered, so we're kind of living the life worth remembering, if that makes sense.
I think I'll say, I know doctors who are English majors. You've got business people who are English majors. You've got journalists who are English majors. And so I think for me, what I appreciated and why I personally opted to go the English route versus the communications specific route, was because it was such a diverse kind of translatable skill set, right? You have to be able to put your ideas into words that make sense to the people, of varying audiences, right? Whether it's a patient or an employee base. And I felt like kind of what Mal was saying, I can learn the tactical of writing an article as a journalist, and that's fine and great. But am I able to translate that skill set more seamlessly if I wanted to do a career change 15 years after I've been doing something? And so I think my English degree has allowed me to gain experience and skills that are not only translatable in different industries, but to different audiences. And it's allowed me to be more agile as a professional. And I could easily go and do a journalism job because I know how to put words together and write them in a way that makes sense for people. Just like I am able to receive those words and form an opinion in the process because, as I said earlier, I'm able to share, build, evolve perspective just based off of all of the learnings that I took as an English major.
Yeah, I would agree with both what Amanda and Mal said. I do think the English major is much more versatile. So like it allows you that flexibility where if you have a marketing degree, you know, you might only be looked at for marketing roles because people are going to think, oh, that's your intention, that's your career path. And I think the beauty of being an English major is it is so flexible and you learn so many of those kind of you hone that critical thinking skill, you hone that writing skill, which is such a huge asset because I can't tell you the number of times I've read emails or of quite senior people that are not written well. Like they need, like a lot of people don't write well. And that is a huge asset to have in your career if you can clearly write your message and be able for that message to be able to land with your audience. So and plus it's fun. Like that was the other thing. Like I did an English major because like I genuinely like to read and write. That those are things that are just like innately about who I am as a person. And so I would say like if that speaks to you as a student, then do what you like to do and use this time in your life to do that and really enjoy your time.
Thank you all so much for your time tonight. This was so wonderful. I'm so excited for everything that y'all are doing out in the world. And thank you for bringing your wisdom back to UT and to our English majors, who I know will appreciate getting to hear about all the really cool things that y'all are doing. So, thank you, and have a wonderful evening.